Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. According to Order Paper Nigeria, which chronicles legislative activities in the House of Representatives, sickle cell disease has been a significant public health issue in Nigeria for decades, and its impact has evolved over the years. Research has shown that Nigeria has one of the highest burdens of sickle cell disease in the world. Critically, the House of Representatives recently received a bill to tackle the burden of sickle cell disease in the country. The bill prescribes severe penalties for non-compliance. For a conversation around that subject, we are now being joined by Dr. Akinsete, who is the Chief Executive Officer and National Director for Sickle Cell of the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adiswa. Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Good to have you.
Good
morning.
Morning.
Now, there is a bill in the House of Representatives that was submitted by Honorable Akinsete, I believe that's who sponsored the bill from
That's
Akinsete.
correct.
Yes, and he's also the spokesman of the House of Representatives. But it prescribed that in order for people to be able to marry, they should have to do genotype screening in order to reduce the burden of sickle cell in Nigeria. Do you think that this is necessary?
Okay, please, can we just set the stage?
Okay.
You can just remind the viewers, remind ourselves what sickle cell is really and why we're so worried about it. First, Nigeria is the sickle cell capital of the world. I saw in your intro you said it's one of the countries with the highest burden. It is the country with the highest burden of sickle cell in the whole world. So I understand, that Nigerians are concerned. So that bill came from a good place, from concern. But again, sickle cell, is also something that's associated with, now we're getting better, but early death, lots of pain, burden on the family. So Nigerians have a right to be worried. So definitely our House of Reps members also have the right to be concerned and come up with bills. Okay, sickle cell itself is a hematological problem. It's a blood disorder that affects the red blood cells. If you remember your biology, white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. This one affects the red blood cells. Those cells are the ones that help you carry oxygen around the body. So without the red blood cells, you can't breathe properly. Your respiration is incomplete. So, remember they say blood is life. So it's fundamental, all right? And then, besides being fraught with pain, it's the main problem that takes patients to hospitals is pain. It's something that's fraught with pain. Families are burdened. It's a big problem. And Nigeria is #1 in the world. So I understand where they're coming from. Having said that, there is empirical evidence that when there is an inherited disorder, you cannot legislate for it or legislate against it. It doesn't work. There's cystic fibrosis that affects mostly white persons. They've tried that, and it doesn't work either. So we've seen that the way to go is counseling, genetic counseling, and then catching them young, which is why I like what the federal government has come up with, that is newborn screening. For instance, in America and the UK, they don't have 1/100th as much sickle cell as we do, but every child that's born gets to be screened for sickle cell. So the family knows early on if your child has sickle cell, if your child's a carrier, has the trait. You're carrying the gene, you can pass it to your offspring, so you know early on. And what we're doing at Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria and a number of other advocacy groups is, if you miss them at birth, you catch them in primary school. So that testing is important. You miss them in primary school, catch them in secondary school, so where there's a group. And then in tertiary institutions, and then youth corps camp. So there are various stages where you can do the testing and you are aware, you are knowledgeable about it, and then there's genetic counseling. Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria really promotes genetic counseling. We train genetic counselors across Nigeria. So, and what is that? These are persons that are certified, they're trained to be able to educate you, educate couples, families, about how to prevent sickle cell happening. Okay, how does that happen? And then we wonder, well, you see, there's evidence also, empirical evidence, that 8 out of 10 couples, even if they are ready to walk up the altar and they come for genetic counseling, 8 out of 10 will still go their separate ways. But there's still the 2 out of 10 that, genetic counselors have to give the other options, what options are available to you if you're not going to marry each other. Because genetic counselors cannot ram down your throat what you should do and what you should not do. There are couples who face you and say, doctor, you have no right to tell me what to do. I'm marrying this person, and that's that. I just want to marry her for companionship. So what? I don't want to have children. So you see, it's for them to be properly educated, counseled, know what options are available. So those 2 out of 10, yes, that's what we do. And what are these options? There is prenatal diagnosis. There is pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. Big terms for simple procedures, really. Prenatal diagnosis tells you that what you're carrying. A couple can know the genotype of their unborn child in early pregnancy. And then pre-implantation genetic diagnosis allows a couple to be able to select, if you like, embryos that do not have the disease, and those are infused in the mother, and she carries them to term. They're available, they're expensive, but they're there. And then there's adoption. Nigerians are adopting more, but we don't know. They're adopting more. And besides, it's your right if you want to marry each other and be couples. There are some states in Nigeria that also have laws, not even bills, that prescribe punitive measures. Okay, this bill, for instance, on the floor of the House, is recommending that any couple who do not go for testing and determined they qualify to, you don't qualify, but anyway, that's it. You're not qualified to marry, and you go ahead and marry. One of two things should happen. Either you are punished by, you pay a fine of 100,000 naira or something like 500,000 naira, or a jail term of 1 year, or both, or a jail term.
If this bill were to pass, I mean, it's one thing to have that bill, which I think it's great, actually, but it's another thing to implement. I like the fact that your foundation offers, genetic counseling and all of that. I mean, what other measures could these couples take, besides what you have elaborated, if they have to go for, this marriage counseling or this, your genetic counseling? What other measures can they take? Because, I mean, if you're saying to me, some couples will say, no, this is my wife, or I must marry this woman, or what can be done? What are you going to do without having all these bills that are there?
That are pushing for you to be qualified, pre-qualified to marry. I've just said that you can have pre-implantation genetic diagnosis or prenatal diagnosis, so you're able to tell before the baby is born what this child has. Okay, people may ask, to what end? To what end, therefore? Okay, and we don't offer, for instance, abortions in our center. We don't. And in fact, Nigeria, I'm sure you're aware, in Nigeria, abortions are still illegal. But if it's for the health of the mother, I think doctors can, request that happens. But some couples are going ahead and procuring abortions. But and like I said, that's fraught with ethical and even religious, implications. So considerations. So also the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. Why? Because when you're selecting embryos that are free of sickle cell, it means you're discarding those that have sickle cell. And I'm Catholic, for instance. Catholic Church will tell you that's murder. But at the end of the day, this is happening all over the world. That selection is happening all over the world. And people who are at risk of having children with sickle cell and other inherited disorders want to know what options are available to them. But more importantly, those who have the condition, what can be done? So we in Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, what we have done is when we determine that in early pregnancy, this child you're carrying has sickle cell, we know that we're going to catch this child early. Because when the child is born, there's no difference between if you have sickle cell and you don't. Then you have a bouncing baby girl or bouncing baby boy, they're fine until about the age of 7 months or 9 months when the child's own genetic makeup begins to show. But prior to that, the child is fine. But if you know in good time, then you can institute preventative measures in the form of vaccinations, in the form of penicillin and antibiotics that prevent infections that tend to kill our children before the age of 5. Many of our children, we lose them before the age of 5. 2 infections. So if we catch them early diagnosis, quick, prompt treatment, they do well. And once they hit that milestone of 5 years, they do well until adolescence. And then you manage them. And more better treatment protocols are coming. We're not going to discard persons with sickle cell who are already living with us. You can't imagine the kind of bills that we've heard being discussed in some houses of representatives. Some like take them to an island somewhere so they don't marry, or things that don't work. It just doesn't make sense. We can take care of those who already have the condition. We're getting better treatment protocols. They're living longer. We have a mama that died at the age of 94. So when people say, they die young, they die by age of 20 or so on, those are myths. I have a young lady who doesn't celebrate her 25th birthday because she was told that once you turn 25, you're dying. So every year, and she's 30-something now, but she celebrates 24 every year, So all those are myths. We can take care of those who have sickle cell. They can live long, productive lives and contribute meaningfully to the community and society. Okay. And we have a cure now. In Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, in partnership with Luth, we have set up a bone marrow transplantation, and that's a cure for sickle cell. Right. It used to say that there was no cure, but there is a cure for sickle cell here in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I would like you to speak slightly more about that, the cure that you mentioned. Is it the same type of a thing that people used to go to India for $25,000?
More than that.
More than that. Okay, that's one. But let me just quickly add to it two things. You said some states already have some laws.
Correct.
Would that be against sickle cell or
yeah, it's not against sickle cell, to prevent sickle cell.
To prevent. Okay. The key area that I'm interested in is to commend your position on the fact that much of what is contained in the bill at the House of Representatives is totally out of tune with reality, and it violates the right of individuals and Nigerians to make a choice as consenting adults. And therefore, if the House of Reps proceeds with this bill to the point of public hearing, will the Sickle Cell Foundation be willing to stand up? We will be there. Absolutely. We will definitely be, along with other advocacy groups, because we have a coalition now to make our voices louder, rather than working in silos. Yeah. So all these advocacy groups are going to come together and we'll match to. We've done that before. Yes. There was a bill on the floor 3 years ago where we said what we need is a comprehensive bill that takes care of those You're right, because who have the disease. You can't legislate over, how people lead their lives, especially when there are cures and treatment. We have seen that it doesn't work. You can't criminalize, some
exactly, and that's what they're proposing. But like I said, it comes from a good place.
Require genetic counseling, how churches require marriage counseling.
That's what I was trying to ask about, even the implementation. How would it work even if it were to pass?
Requiring genetic counseling
would be a positive thing.
Requiring that can be requiring also that persons because children are the ones who suffer the most. They should be treated free. These children in sickle cell needs to be treated every day of one's life. Yeah. So they need to take medication every day of their life. Mothers will tell you that we have to feed our children first before medication. So we want government to look at a very comprehensive bill that should be passed into law that speaks to free treatment for at least children under the age of 5. And that will help us because we lose over 100,000 children every year. Before they turn 5.
The cure you spoke about, how long will it take and how expensive, in quote,
is it? Okay, how long? It's not, I've said it many times, it's not a stroll in the park. And not every person with sickle cell qualifies for that procedure. The doctors who do it are very selective because, like I said, it's not easy to do. But you also have to assess the patient for a period of 6 months and make a determination of whether you're a good candidate. And if you are, then they do the blood. It's like a transfusion. Bone marrow transplantation requires a donor. Yeah. In our protocol, you take the marrow from a brother or sister, a sibling. That's closest to your brothers and sisters than to your parents. You can get 100% match amongst your siblings, but 50-50 from your parents. And then you infuse it like a blood transfusion into the patient. And it takes within a month or so. And then we take care of them over the next 3 months. And then if you're SS, you become AA. Or if you're SS, you become AS, depending on who your donor is.
It isn't the same thing as stem cell?
That's stem cell transplantation. Now, bone marrow is a source of stem cell. All right. Bone marrow is what you see, that mushy substance in the middle of your bones.
And the price?
That's a marrow.
Estimate?
And the price, I won't be able to speak to that now because we've just done our first 2, and we're beginning to put together exactly how much that will cost. But Sickle Cell Foundation is going to stand in the gap and ensure that it's accessible to many Nigerians.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all the good work that you do.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very glad to have been here.